I like it.
In style.
Okay, I'm calling to order the joint city council and planning and zoning commission meeting for the city of Hayden. It is Thursday, September 12th, 2024, is approximately 4:03. May we get a roll call of city council members, please?
Council President Roeder?
Yes.
Councilmember DePriest?
Yep.
Councilmember Schaefer?
Yes.
And Councilmember White is absent. We do have a quorum.
Very good. We are going to roll into our workshop. It's the 2040 Comprehensive Plan Amendments Workshop. I do have an introduction script. If you'll bear with me, I'm going to read that real quick. Good afternoon, City Council members, Planning and Zoning Commissioner, our staff, and Hayden citizens. I expected some Hayden citizens here. Maybe some will show. Welcome to our workshop to advance the revision of our city's comprehensive plan. A special welcome to Rachel Granith and Cassidy Olheiser of SJC Alliance. Welcome.
Thank you.
Using the results of the 2023 citizen survey, the city began work to revise the comprehensive plan, including updating our comprehensive plan's vision, goals, and policies. Related to today's workshop, I realized this morning by speaking with a colleague whose counsel I'm learning to respect, that when we are upset, we may lose sight of what the public has entrusted us to do. I am beyond disappointed to read this morning on social media the rhetoric representing today's meeting. I realize that not every citizen will be completely satisfied with every detail of today's work, but I want to make clear one word which binds this workshop: community. That is why we are here and who we represent. To the citizens watching on YouTube, now or later, to witness our city transparently working, the future land use map is well within our crosshairs to modify as we preserve our neighborhoods, reflect the information provided by you, and to support Idaho state law. So let us continue to work together as we have this past year to the betterment of Hayden. I'll turn it over to our guests.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. That was a great introduction. So we've put together just a framework for a discussion today, and you're welcome to all join the table if you would like. And as we've put together, following the scope of work and approach to this, is we have 3 workshops. And this first workshop, as the mayor just pointed out, is really a discussion on these proposed amendments. You all have done quite a bit of work already, and so we're revisiting some of that. We've put together just kind of a memorandum summarizing where you've been, and that includes a lot of the public feedback that you've heard and where those are addressed in your existing comprehensive plan and your amended goals and policies. And so we're looking to kind of go through that, and I'll briefly walk us through that real quick. And then the really targeted results here is talking about the goals, seeing if that's on target with where you want to go, and your policies, as well as taking a look at that future land use map and making revisions in line with what we've heard thus far and a lot of the meetings and feedback that you all have been working towards. So that will also then lead into our team doing an assessment of the impacts of these changes to both your goals and policies as well as your future land use map. So for example, where does that affect your utilities or your park service or your density and transportation networks? And so all of those are coordinated with your comprehensive plan because you did all those elements at the same time. So they all should work hand in hand. So with that, I did prepare just a statement. Cassie and I worked on a statement of what the comprehensive plan requirements are in Idaho. And so in this memo, we did break down those requirements and where they're addressed in the comprehensive plan.
Is that this one right here?
Yes, that's the memo. So the
This is
first,
the one, Donna, that you
Hand me
emailed to
that
us?
one down there.
you want a colored one?
I apparently didn't stack them the same way you do, and I want to be able to follow.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Does anyone else need something? All good? Okay. So the first part of this memo goes over the public engagement and where the related goals and policies are. And I think that's really important to keep in mind because when you hear comments and feedback, a lot of the times you might have something already addressing that in some component. And I think a lot of what we've heard here goes to actions and how you implement your comprehensive plan. You know, a lot of it was really tangible. We were driving in and one of the comments was flower boxes and, you know, those are the implementation, not as much the like goals and policies of how you get there. And feel free to interrupt us, or this is meant to be a dialogue. And so on page 4 of this memo, we break down the Idaho requirements that are outlined in Idaho code. And so there is, there are a lot of legal parameters that are set, but how you achieve that is up to each local jurisdiction. So you're not mandated to do it one way or the other. As long as you address it, that's meeting the legal standard. And so what we did is go through all of those requirements that are very clearly required, but you could be addressing it, for example, I think one of them that doesn't really apply to you is the natural interest electric transmission corridors. You meet that criteria by saying it's not applicable. So, I mean, that's meeting the legal threshold.
You see, that brings out, real quick, a citizen has insisted that we had to address education, and we don't have any
Jurisdiction.
Yeah, that's what it was. So as such, are we required, they said, no, the whole plan is invalid because you don't address it. Is that
No.
factual?
No.
Yeah. Okay.
No, and again, legally, these are all the components that are required legally. You could have something in there if you wanted to work with your schools and do something above and beyond, but you are not mandated
These are
to.
the ones that are required.
Yes. Did you want to add anything there?
Yeah, I mean, one of the required components is school facilities and transportation. And in the current comprehensive plan, there is a section about school facilities. So that covers it.
It meets the, or whatever.
It also applies to agriculture then, because I know we don't have agriculture specifically spelled out in the comprehensive plan.
Yeah, and you
In
do
detail.
actually have a reference to it, but,
Right.
and
We would
again,
have a chapter, for example.
yes, and you don't have to have dedicated chapters.
This is area of impact.
Here.
One of the cool things about the state of Idaho and your comprehensive planning as it compares to like the state of Washington as example, you're free to really make it what you want as a jurisdiction. And that's intentional for cities and jurisdictions to really become what they want through this effort. It's not prescriptive. You have to touch on these things, but how you do that is up to you as a jurisdiction, which is neat. So, do you have any questions on the kind of legal side of this? Okay. Another thing I just do want to touch upon is the amendment and adoption process. You are able to do that every 6 months, I believe. Is that correct, Cassidy?
The council can propose it whenever they like. Citizens, they have to wait 6 months before they, not recommend, but.
Bring it forth
Yeah,
another issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So what do you mean? So we find something that we want to tweak,
Mhm.
we can do that every 6 months.
You can do that anytime as the
We can do it
council.
anytime.
What this says is that every 6 months, a petition could be brought forward from the public to change something in your comprehensive plan.
Donna, can you even quote the last petition that was ever brought before council?
Well, I mean, we did it with a zone map amendment and or an annexation and a comp plan map amendment at the same time, but they're really infrequent.
Those are single-use cases too, it wasn't like,
Correct.
Yeah.
Is that something the public knows they can do?
You have to ask the public.
probably not.
Objection, speculation.
Nice.
Can we speculate?
Moving on.
I don't know, you could talk to the people that you communicate with and
Okay.
ask them that, yeah.
All right.
So I have a question. For this process of amending our comp plan, does it have to, any amendments that, where does it start? Would it go to P and Z first, and then they have to make the recommendations to the changes, and then it comes to the city council, or how's the process work?
I think that's codified, Donna, in your process.
Say that again. Sorry.
Procedure for amending your comprehensive plan here in Hayden, does that go before
Goes planning and zoning first, and then city council.
Yeah.
2 public hearings.
Donna, I know you're a very busy person. Would you mind, at your earliest convenience, emailing me a citation of our city code where that is
Yep.
described?
I can.
Or you can email the whole city council and copy me?
I'll be right back.
We can show you where it is online too, or you could have access to it.
Yeah, you know, I'm still on the job training here, so.
It's like teaching you to fish rather than giving you one. So I would much rather show you where it's at online, and that way you have access to it.
I'm sorry, I'm too lazy for that.
Oh, but we'll light a fire under you, so you're not so much.
The online version has a search option, a text search.
Okay.
We'll do both.
I can handle that.
So one other thing we wanted to just highlight as part of this process is that Idaho does not require a certain amount of time between updates either. You could have a comprehensive plan in place, and that could be in place for 10, 15, 20 years. You know, you could take a look at it, there's a process there. But you're not necessarily mandated to amend it any certain time frame. There's a best practices, which is every 5 to 10 years.
Yeah.
8 years is usually kind of the rule of thumb, and that's spelled out again here, so.
Are we bound for the public's consumption, Lisa? Are we bound by a frequency, by ordinance, or by resolution?
As far as amending the comp plan, the state law suggests every 6 months you should have that, but I think they took out the mandate requiring it be at least 6 months. So it can be at any point, but internal policy suggests that you try not to amend a long-range plan more than once a year.
Right, but what I'm asking, is there anything specifically that binds us, or is it just a practice?
No, there's
that we do it
nothing-
Every 4 years?
Yeah, it's all legislative in nature as far as the action that's taken. So, meaning you can have conversations, you can talk with the public, you can
Okay.
engage with them and they can engage with you, but you're not obligated, just like you're not obligated to pass any laws.
Thank you.
Okay. So, any other questions or thoughts on that section?
No, I think we're all dying to
You're-
dive into the vision
Okay,
and just keep
let's do
going
it.
from there.
Can
Okay,
I just, can
so-
Rachel,
yeah.
just really quick? So let me just, I just would like to interject briefly here is that we do have update cycles on our long-range plans for sewer master planning and transportation planning. So if we're thinking about potentially wanting to change a future land use map, you wouldn't want to update your long-range plans with parks and sewer and transportation and then turn immediately around and do a comp plan update, because then they would be in conflict potentially with your long-range plans. So I agree with Lisa, but I just wanted to kind of couch that a little bit. If you do that, you get kind of in backwards mode and it's really ugly.
Right, no, I asked the question just again to clarify for the public that we have a practice that we do,
Correct.
but it's not required by law,
Correct.
Idaho code simply says periodically.
periodically.
It-
Thank you.
So for your, just to clarify too, Donna, the transportation, sewer, and parks, are those mandated separately for specific?
And we usually have a 5-year time
It's a
frame that we
5-year
do a update
Okay.
cycle on those.
Great. Well, I'm going to actually skip past the maps first because I'd like to end with that. So I'd like to go down to talk about the goals first. And you all, again, have done quite a bit of work here and consolidated into 7 goals with appropriate policy references. And so we didn't have much. We just wanted to, we had just a 1-word change on goal 3. But I don't know if you all had thoughts or ideas as we talk about the goals and the recommended changes that you all have been workshopping for a while.
I think we're primarily looking for you to give us feedback. This has been shopped out
Yeah.
thoroughly
Yeah.
with planning and zoning and with city council. And again, as I alluded to in my opening remarks, not everybody got what they wanted.
Yeah.
But part of working together as a team or as a body is to reach a consensus. And so this is our consensus.
Yeah. We looked at it, we just had a 1-word change on the goals and then a couple suggestions on the policies. I think your 7 goals are nice and seem that they really address what you're looking for the future here in Hayden. We can talk a little bit about the policies specifically. I think it's just a bit of wordsmithing at this point. We had a suggestion to policy 2 to change minimizing additional tax burden to minimizing increased taxes to residents where possible. On 4, we had just changing the language to infield fill for infill projects. We did find that parks, leisure, or natural was in your plan, but that it may make sense to have parks and open space
Well,
versus.
actually, that was debated, I think.
It was?
Thoroughly, yeah. We
Okay.
didn't want open space because as we discussed earlier, if you ask somebody what open space means, you're gonna get 5 different answers if you ask 5 different people.
Okay,
So that's
That's
why
great.
that's why we were specific in that we want to ensure that,
Great.
as Hayden has developed, that our development community keeps in mind that we want parks, we want leisure space, we want natural spaces, as opposed to watching Hayden turn into just a big suburb of homes. And because again, open space to them could be an empty lot or a simple field.
we'll make a note of that because I think as you amend your plan, we should define what that means to you in your parks chapter.
Okay.
So,
Unless anybody on council have, or Mary, do you guys have any different take on that?
No, I think that's exactly why we need it, because open space is what, that there's more room between houses?
sure.
Yeah, or ask a farmer what open space is, right?
Yeah, versus someone that came over here from the west side, it's gonna be very different.
Okay. Buffering versus passive recreation.
Exactly,
Gotcha.
exactly.
Okay. And then on policy 16, we had some questions for you on this one. You use the statement of environmental impact analysis, which is a tad of a formal term. And so I'm wondering,
I forgot about this.
I'm wondering what your intent is there, if it's meant to be environmental protection, cost benefit, kind of that impact analysis.
Right, rubber meets the road with this one is Hayden sitting adjacent to and partially on top of an aquifer. We have, I know, some issues with citizens over what was potentially, depending on who you talk to, wetland that has been developed on. And so the idea with this policy is that some kind of an analysis would be done so that it doesn't look like the city is prioritizing development over our natural resources. Is that, council, you got a better way to put it?
No, I think that's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, I guess to give some insight at what concerns me about the aquifer is that, how much density of housing can we put over the aquifer before it affects the aquifer? And there's got to be some studies that show that, if we have an urban blanket throughout the city of Hayden, what does that do to the aquifer? And that's really a concern, because that's a drinking water source for over 500,000 people. So, I don't know I can address the concern, but I'm not sure if you're doing a study, if there's anything out there that says, yeah, at X amount of houses per acre over an aquifer, that's it. But every aquifer is unique, and the soil type and depth and all that, so.
Well, and Matt, the problem with that too is when we're looking at projects, we're looking at individual projects. And how much does that project affect it? Well, that project might not, but can we pull in the whole thing? Cumulative, when we're talking about a single project. So that makes it difficult for us. We would need language that allowed us to take in the whole scope, right? Wouldn't we? Need something that made it okay for us to look at the whole scope when we're talking about a single project. When it comes to an accumulation of residents over the wall.
And remember, you're only looking at your guiding visionary documents
Right.
now, not a code revision,
Right.
which is different, but.
That's what I'm
yes.
saying is,
To
yeah,
that-
that's a concern, but there would be more to it to define that. Otherwise, how would we ever do anything with that?
I think we,
So,
go ahead.
in response to you, Fonda, I'm of the understanding that you're hearing from us as legislators to define or help represent the vision of the community.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And you're gonna go away and you're gonna drive a proposed set of code changes, right? Or action plan?
No.
Is that right?
That'll be the next step that we work on, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah, no, they're not doing your code changes, your
Okay.
action plan. They're working on helping you finalize proposed amendments to your goals and policies, which will then
Okay, all right.
Allow us to update.
allow you
Yeah.
to make adjustments to your,
All right, well, I was mistaken on that, but I'm gonna finish my thought because the mayor reminded me, this is my red lines here. Okay.
Oh, okay.
It's been months.
There you go.
Sorry, and I wanted to give you my background so you understand
Sure.
where I'm at on this. So, my interest started out as just a private citizen where I observed, and it's behind us now, and I only wish to learn from this mistake and do the right thing going forward, which was a development in our community was authorized in an area where clearly to me and a large swath of citizens, we thought it was a mistake. It was a wetland.
but- and we do have to be careful with that because we do still have active preliminary plats there.
Copy, and I'm not gonna say any more
Okay.
specifically related to that.
Sure.
But my proposal when we first workshopped this way back at the beginning of the year was we need to be more forward-thinking about
Yeah.
how we permit developments and from an environmental impact perspective. And on the other hand, though, I have observed that requirements for environmental impact statements can be used as a tool to stop fair and legitimate development. So to just say for every development we're going to do an environmental impact statement is fraught with peril. I would like to strike a balance in between.
Sure. Yeah, and they're quite costly too.
Well, and that's,
Yeah.
my ears picked up on something you said. If we accidentally inserted a technical term that means a whole lot more than we think with the words environmental impact analysis, I guess we'd be looking at your help to soften that,
Yeah.
to communicate our intention
Yeah.
without accidentally triggering something that would cost a developer an
Sure.
extra $100,000 every time
Yeah.
they want to put a house in.
Yeah, I think your words could potentially be skewed in the direction of unintended consequences for different types of development you may want to see.
Right,
So,
because again, for the public out of these policies, then we would potentially be updating our city ordinances, which
Sure.
would make the laws of our city.
Yeah, yeah,
See, and again, kind of what you just brought on there, we often hear, well, it's in your comprehensive plan and it's in your goals and policies. And I think it's very important that soften is correct, but that we do use the correct terminology because people do often cite, and for lack of a better term, use what's in there as a basis
yeah,
to justify their wants.
yeah. Yeah, so I think what I'm hearing you say is you're looking for clear and measurable metrics to analyze your wetlands and aquifers and natural and environmental resources to best look at projects and locations and densities and,
Well, yes, but not necessarily written within the policy. I think that kind of detail goes down to the ordinance, right? I think what we're looking for is more of our intention. So we want to demand some kind of, again, I don't know what the right word is, if it's not an impact analysis, but something that takes into account protecting our natural resources before we just slap some bricks and sticks.
I'd like to ask a question. Anywhere in our goals and policies, does it say that we will try to protect the aquifer? Do we specifically say that anywhere?
I would think so, 6 on the goals.
Where does it say aquifer?
Well, it doesn't say aquifer, it says protect, preserve, and be stewards of our environmental natural area and resources.
Well, I'd like to have it specifically then.
I thought it did somewhere in the document. I'm gonna do a word search right now.
See, I recall we took out the specifics because at one time, I think Honeysuckle Beach was brought up, I think the aquifer was brought up, and I thought we made it a little broader on purpose.
Well, I think it's an important enough goal to have it in there.
I guess. Is anybody worried about it being weaponized, though, if we're that specific? And it's just a question, not a statement.
This is just going through the back of my head related to this whole thing. Any development, for the most part, is all sewer now. And so what actually ends up percolating down through the aquifer is already treated, minimized. Well, if sewage comes out of your house through pipes into the treatment, hopefully none of it percolates down into it. So I don't know how to quantify the potential danger to the aquifer from substances percolating down through that we really have much, if any, ability to manage.
That's stormwater.
Well, stormwater, yeah.
Yeah, that's,
Yeah.
fertilizer coming,
Right,
oils off
wash off.
cleaners, and all that. So,
Right.
I mean, it's just, I think as a city, I think our people would agree, let's do what we can to protect our aquifer. And there are test sites that are randomly tested for the aquifer to kind of watch where the quality goes. So, I mean, those could be read, they can be analyzed, but I like the idea that we as a city are moving forward to say, hey, we're going to protect our aquifer. That is important.
I think it's said, but obviously this is a group. Donna?
So on page 32 of the comprehensive plan, the fourth paragraph under groundwater, it says, of our current comp plan, it says, additional efforts to protect the aquifer from contamination have been undertaken by Panhandle Health District and the city of Hayden. They administer several aquifer protection programs, including stormwater runoff, sewage management, critical materials programs. Panhandle Health District has many programs that work to protect the aquifer and the drinking water for the people of North Idaho. Environmental health specialists work to contain and inventory hazardous chemicals, test soils, and ensure proper sewage disposal systems, and evaluate public water systems to help them meet state and federal standards.
Where's that found, Donna?
Page 32, paragraph 4
Of
under
what?
groundwater of our current comp plan.
Okay, so we already have it. Okay, that's fine. That's why I asked the question.
I just wanted to make sure that
Where
that's
does it
answered
say
your question.
the aquifer?
All right, very good.
Thank you.
But
You're welcome.
just to provide context on this conversation, hopefully we can move on after this, is before the meeting started, Councilman Roder and I were discussing the level of testing requirements that HARS currently requires, and that there is a steady ratcheting increase in testing and effluent, in requirements and effluent coming out of the sewer treatment plan, to the point where you're prognosticating they won't ever allow us to drain into the Spokane River in the future. Therefore, it will have to be distributed out onto the prairie, where it will filter down into the aquifer. So.
Yeah, there's discussion about, we have the ability to land apply, but only certain months, not during the winter. During the winter months, the cold months where the affluent cannot be absorbed into the land, because we have 300 some acres that we do land apply, have the ability to land apply, it goes into the Spokane River. And like Council Member Tom Schaefer, we'll get there, you're my neighbor, said is that we're being faced with PFAS and also testing of fish flesh out of the Coeur d'Alene River for oxidized mercury. And these PFAS testing is going to be part of our new permit, is what I understand, that it will be required. The cost to the citizens is extraordinary. So the option is to land apply and get out of the Spokane River, which there's been talk about that for quite a while. So it is an issue for our city to think about the effect that has on the aquifer. But that's also related to growth, because the more growth we have, the more affluent we have to treat, the more potential filtration issues to the aquifer it becomes.
And aquifers don't know city borders either, so.
Well, actually, you guys are the final recipients, because it flows into the Lake Coeur d'Alene and.
Us as Spokane.
And
Oh.
then there's-
You personally.
I
Fantastic.
did have a question on this document. I don't see the vision, did I overlook it?
No, actually, I don't think we ended up getting it in here.
Did you have any comments on it as provided?
I don't think we
No, I
did,
don't
no.
think so.
I just don't think it made it in the
Okay,
document.
just wanted to
Yeah.
make sure that no surprises.
Yes, no,
Thanks.
no changes from us on that.
Okay, I think we're ready to move on.
Okay, well, I think that's great. So what we'll do is take a stab at 16 and clean these up and send those back to you. And really, the last item we had was going back to those maps on that chapter. I think it was 7 and 8. I do have your current one printed, so this is what is active today. And then we do have one that was a draft for discussion purposes. And then Donna had added in the memo, but I don't have a big print of it, the transition zone, I believe around Hutter, the bypass.
Right.
So, and the intent with the transition zone, if we can talk about that really quick. Donna, do you want to add anything here? Okay. Is to allow for flexible land uses as you see what happens with the Hutter bypass, as well as, you know, allowing for different things as you don't know the future yet really of that corridor.
So I guess what we were kind of talking about, Rachel and I were talking about, and we've talked about in previous conversations related to Hutter, is that none of us own a really good crystal ball, although we would like to. We have land that is pretty much north of the Hutter, pretty much in our ACI, that as it annexes in, will have projects, and you'll be able to look at its neighborhood context, both today and in the future, at the time of annexation, and you'll be able to amend those transition zones, that transition area, like we did at the previous annexation that came in, based on the use that's proposed. You'd establish the zone, and then you'd also establish that on the future land use map. It recognizes that fact because we still don't know, and probably won't know in any time near future, what Hutter is really doing. And so it allows for that flexibility to either be single-family residential maybe, or it might be commercial. I mean, it just, we don't know, or it may be a smattering of some mixed use depending on the project as it's being proposed. So that's what that transition piece. I just wanted to kind of talk about these two maps really quickly. We had kind of worked around workshop ideas with the future land use map, and the map that's at the top that you don't have a picture of, this one here, it shows kind of that transition zone around Hutter, but it also shows, I'm going to use Hayden Canyon, as blue and purple. But we know that Hayden Canyon is predominantly a single-family PUD with some flexibility of housing stock. So it's misleading to have this purple block where it really doesn't have anything commercial or multifamily, hardly. And then this mixed residential block, it's misleading because, you know, it's got a big swath of open space up the middle of it. And so it was kind of talked about in the background to recognize those PUDs for what they really were and modify them to their actual yellow color that they're residential when they're residential, and make those changes on here as well. So that's the difference between these two predominantly. And the other difference is that it was discussed that there was some concern about the depth of the mixed use category, and to kind of roll that back to closer to that 300 foot from the section line or center line of the arterial that it was adjacent to. And where I think that may make some sense, I did ask that we potentially look at language that talked about the fact that these are really fuzzy lines. I mean, it's hard to draw a line fuzzy. I'm the first person to say that. But, you know, these are big, broad brushstrokes on how we want development to look. And it may make sense when a project comes in that it goes a little bit past that 300-foot line to build, however, according to the comp plan, and that they could request that in accordance with that. So that's not uncommon or unheard of to be put in comprehensive plans, that you give a kind of a fudge factor of some distance.
So I'm saying, so like from 300 to 500 feet kind of thing, you give a range?
Potentially. the previous plans, the previous comp plans of the city of Hayden always had a fuzzy line that gave a range, yeah.
What would be the factors that would determine that? Because what I envision is people coming in and say, if it says 500, and if you give 500 to one, you're going to have other people come in and say, well, we want it, and
It's a zone map amendment, and you're still doing it. Everything that you would have a future land use map is showing potentially what you want it to look like, but you may have projects that come in that make sense, that it works a little past that, and you would treat that with your zone map amendment standards of approval. You'd review it at that time.
because I'll be honest about it, what really concerns me, if anybody has driven down Government Way and looked to your west, south of Prairie, behind Target, and I did a little research on it, their phase they're in now has, what is it, 120 multifamily and 630 apartments in 16 acres. Yeah, and so their second phase, I can see 1,000 dwelling units packed into that area, and I'm very concerned about seeing similar things when you talk about, well, they have the ability to expand back if we're going to play the fuzzy line and end up, that's what I'm looking for without getting in trouble.
Precedent.
Yeah, well, that too, but yeah, when it's done down there, in my opinion, is gonna be 1,000 dwelling units in that area. What it's gonna do to the traffic and everything else, I'm very concerned about seeing anything like that here in Hayden. So that fuzzy line, I would prefer to see, very similar to what we see out here with those apartments out there at Hayden and Hutter, whatever those are there, 300 feet, 500 feet, that's about as deep as I want to see things. Or, going back inward. Just my 2 cents.
No, I think you're going to find there's a consensus. I'm
On
looking
reduction.
A reduction
Yeah.
in the amount of mixed use,
Sure.
squeezing it closer to the primary corridors
Okay.
right now. And again, I think all this work that went into the 2020 comprehensive plan was done with good intention. Sometimes it takes, putting out a plan to discover that there are some things that can be improved in it. So I know you've given us a draft here. I guess my question is, what if we want to make changes to the FLUM? There's some things on here I personally am not really keen on.
Sure, yeah.
Are we
and I
just
think
going to
that was just
discuss these
discussion.
two,
Yeah.
or where do we want to go?
Yeah, so I'd love some input first on what Donna talked about with that transition zone and the feelings on that, or unless you
You're
want.
talking out by Hutter corridor?
Yeah, because I represent the city on the Kootenai Metropolitan Planning Organization, and we just had this discussion today, and the mayor has asked me to dog them on answers for this. And there is the Rathdrum Prairie Planning and Environmental Linkages Study, Donna, I'm sure you're well aware of that. And that is going to public review and comment this coming November. The date and location is TBD. But there's what, 12.5 different proposed corridors they're looking at. And the Rathdrum, or the Hutter bypass is only one of them, and it's not their highest priority, but because it's basically a state level corridor, they still own it. And the closest we can get for them to plant a flag right now is they're in the environmental study phase of it. And once they finish with that, then they will be able to narrow up the setbacks where appropriate, so that then it frees up that area for wherever that is in the city of Hayden to be used for, or not, for land development. But it's not going away. We have no way to influence it as a, to make it go away or to stay. It's just, it freezes the city out of certain areas. Did I state that right, Donna? Okay, good.
So can I ask you then, Tom? Where does that, how does that affect us doing anything along that corridor that, how can
Right
we
now,
even do
we can't,
anything?
right now, the current setbacks are in place. Once the environmental study is done, Glenn Miles said they may be able to reduce them in places because they'll have a better idea of where it will be.
But they're not
Okay.
looking for it to get larger? So,
I don't think so. I think
Okay.
right now, the setbacks are larger because they're not absolutely sure where.
I would rather them go that way. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And for what it's worth, I think, was it Senator Rich's representative we met with this week?
Correct.
And we basically communicated to the senator via his representative that this Hutter bypass issue is really holding our city at hostage. We have to make land use decisions potentially, and we feel like we can't because, you know, whether a bypass goes through there or not significantly shapes what the west side of our town is gonna look like.
And your traffic impacts, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm making some notes too about some potential actions as I'm hearing you all talk too. So I think, you know, the transition zone, how are you all feeling about the flexibility and ambiguity that kind of comes with that? If you were to make a mapping,
So are you talking between currently between, transition between different zones?
No,
Or
Tom,
just
right, this right here.
just the Hutter bypass?
just the Hutter bypass currently? And again, as
So we'd
Donna
be-
has
we'd be-
defined
We'd
this,
be boring a new zone, right?
it would be shaping that use to have flexibility.
Or new
It could
use.
be,
It would be a new land use, not a
New
new
land use,
zone.
that's what I'm trying to say.
correct, it's
So there'd be
future
a new
land use. Yes. So instead of as it looks right now, it would have flexibility to allow for a mixture of things, including single-family, commercial, mixed use, but it would be project-specific at the time of whatever you have there, because you don't know yet. So that's what is being
I mean, the
proposed.
only downside is it could turn into a real mishmash, which we,
It could,
that,
Yeah.
I don't know.
My opinion is if, and I'm speaking hypothetically with an extreme case, just to make an example, let's say we did do what you're proposing and then some kind of mixed commercial use was planted out there. You know that old saying, plant a stake in the ground and then you kind of own it? And so what I would hate to see happen is that becomes a justification for maybe doing something else which we otherwise wouldn't want. So I personally feel like we have to wait for the state. That's my opinion.
I think in the meantime, and I know this was discussed, the area west of Hutter and up in through there is a lot of rural ag, residential, suburbanish type of, you know, if you look at what's out there right now. And we already have a couple of projects, and there was an annexation, Hayden and the church, that church over there,
Hayden and Prairie.
and things like that, that the more open we can keep the area, as far as if we're gonna label transition zones, and I can't read what's on there, whether it's, you know, ag, residential, suburban, or rural, or whatever it is, I think the safer, because I think if you start, I think what I just heard, somebody goes in there and plops a large development in there, then that's there. I mean, and then the state comes on and says, oh, by the way, we are gonna do this. Well, we don't know what we're gonna do, and I've been to several of these ITD open houses that they have. The last one was out there at, on Lancaster, what's that group out there?
Lancaster and
Just
government?
No, Lancaster on the other side, not, I want to say
I don't know what you're talking about.
Kiwanis, or not Kiwanis, but,
Shriner?
huh?
Shriners?
Shriners. I believe they had an open house thing there a couple of months ago now, where they also had, it seemed like there were like 40, I don't know how many different options there were. And I talked to several of the people there at each table where they talked about it, And as Councilmember Schaefer indicated, I get the feeling that Hutter bypass is not on their upper tier priorities. I get the sense that they're looking at coming more along the hill out there through, over the top of Rathdrum to 53. Don't know. But I think we don't have, the city does not have much residential suburban anymore. A lot of that's being designated otherwise. Don't have much open space type of thing, which this already is. And I think the more that we can kind of keep it as is, especially until we're certain what's going to happen, probably the better and safer it is in the overall scope.
So you all have mentioned a couple things as I'm hearing you talk about the transition in open space and leisure space between areas. Is that something that maybe we want to designate here of literal open space?
Well, the county, I believe, somebody tried to run a bond or whatever it was to purchase and buy open space. Because, you take an overview of the prairie area 20 years ago, 10 years ago now, it just gets swallowed up. And people, it's all disappearing type of thing. And I think, in our survey, I believe, people want half acre, they want some larger lots, and that's about the only area that we have right now, especially right here, where we still have the ability to preserve that. You have, what are those developments in Post Falls, just south of Prairie, those large 5-10 acre, real nice developments out there. And I mean, this would allow for some of that if it were to ever even come in. If we were, right now, it's not. But yeah, I personally would like to take the opportunity, while it's still there, if possible, to say, yeah, this is going to be the area that if we can, we're going to continue to keep it somewhat ruralish, to have that rural feeling.
So my understanding then, right now we have the Hutter bypass, which looks like a combination of mostly mixed use on the Flum and shared tier. And what Ed is proposing is some kind of a land use designation where it's just open space. Is that what I'm understanding?
Well, Brickard, I think, is the name of one of them, and Big Sky, or something like that, where they're developed. It's not just raw land, but it's ruralish type of,
It's 1 to 5 acre.
well, it's bigger. I mean, I think it's 5 and 10 acre.
Okay.
There's some very large, very nice, homes and the like out there.
What's the name of that again?
One of them, I believe, is Brickard. For some reason, I'm wanting to say Big Sky, but I could be wrong.
Is that in Coeur d'Alene?
No, well, it's actually, I think it's Post Falls, because it's west of Hutter, south of Prairie,
It is.
all the way down Pole Line, and even on the other side of Pole Line, as you go down into that area. But again, it's very well,
But
very nice.
As a body though, do we want to task SJC to come up with an alternative land use other than what is being proposed here as, would you call it transitional? Maybe it's something that's more open, I'm not sure. I mean, is that what?
Or if we leave it transitional, does it leave it up to the council to just at the time look at the situation
I think that's what Donna was trying
and
to
say,
propose, yeah.
does that give us the ability to then, let's say a developer comes in and says, well, we want to do this, and you've done this here, the precedent aspect. You allowed them to do it, and so you almost get your hand tied, and you get that threat of, if you don't let us do it too, you're gonna be spending money on legal fees, whether you win or lose. So however it is, I'd like the council at the time, whenever it is, to be able to say, well, right now, we just don't feel it fits,
Without getting sued.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that's where your implementation measures really will help, is forming your code and your regulations that are really locked down, so you don't have ambiguity in your decision-making. So you can have flexible zones that provide for, character and needs and uses. And I think that could be achieved in a way that doesn't make you liable legally.
Open this up, yeah.
Yeah,
I'd like to kind of give my 2 cents in.
yeah.
Hutter bypass has been talked about for decades. And even 40 years ago, there was some plan to go up north of the airport and get back onto 95. So this has been going on and on and on and on and on. And until we know for certain, I have a real problem with trying to designate land a certain way.
Other than what it already is, right?
Right, and so the idea that we can change our comp plan or our future land use map, maybe in 6 months or whatever, that maybe when, for sure, if this Hutter bypass is gonna happen, we can address it then.
Yeah.
And so I'm getting a sense that, you know, a transitional, I like the idea of somehow maintaining that area where what's proposed is the Hutter bypass, to maintain it as open space. We don't know whether or not Hutter will come through, and if it does, how it could affect anything we approve as a development along there. And so we'd have to put in a lot of parameters into figuring out how to, maybe something's gonna happen, so we're gonna allow you to do this. I would like just to keep it as open as possible, with as much flexibility that we can have until we know for sure, and then when we know for sure, we can deal with it. So I don't know how we define that area, but I'm not excited about making any specific plans for land use
Sure.
in that Hutter bypass.
Don, is that something you can work with SJC on the verbiage to,
Yeah.
if we're not
Ed,
gonna
is
call
that
it, if
kinda
we're not
what you-
gonna,
Yeah.
if we're not gonna
That's
call
what I-
it
yeah, I
transitional,
agree.
Yeah,
figure out something
Commit to
that,
anything.
that meets that.
I agree in spirit with what you guys have said already. My only challenge would be is what if we do not nail it down in the flum, we don't define what it is, and then leave it up to specific rezoning applications, you know, city councilmen come and go. The next person may hold a different spirit to what that land should look like than we do here. So defining it as something to be, for the time being, to be protected until either the Hutter corridor goes away or is established, is, in my opinion, a better way to do this, if that makes sense.
So say hypothetically, we planned ahead thinking it's not gonna happen. Hutter bypass, hypothetically, it's not gonna happen. So we then allow whatever development or land use there, and if it blocks it, prevents it, is that okay? Prevents the Hutter bypass from happening if we,
They'd eminent domain, whatever it was, or whatever, when it.
well, no,
when
but
it
I'm
comes
just
down
saying,
to it, they
we
come
can
in
only
and
wait
say,
so
"Sorry."
long, and if they can't tell us, we gotta keep moving forward. What if we do move forward?
No, they won't go for that.
I think that's a question probably for 5 years from now.
Yeah.
So that, so we just kinda in limbo?
Well, we've already dealt to some small degree with this annexation of the church that wants to come in there, because it's right there on Hutter. So they are going to do what they're going to do there, and they, if I remember correctly, they have left the setbacks as part of their project and things like that. But I think, again, it may have been a different story if someone had come in and said, we're gonna build 50 houses right there on the, along it. It would have been a different discussion.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, that type of thing.
The annexation agreements along Hutter of property that has annexed into the city have in their annexation agreements that they agreed to as mitigation to annex into the city, agree to have that area that's in the Hutter footprint as a no-build zone.
Right.
And so once we finally get an answer from somebody that tells us whether they're building a Hutter corridor or the city's going to figure out how to build a transportation corridor in there, if that's what we decide we're doing, then they could come back and amend their annexation agreement accordingly, request to annex their amend their annexation agreement accordingly based on the decision of whatever we get for the Hutter corridor at that time. They're all aware of that
And
fact.
hey,
That's not new.
there's a lot of people who have expressed a desire to not move farther west. And you have our neighbors who are demonstrating a desire to move east. And as they do so, by the time down the road, we may have nothing to say about what goes on in there.
Have we given you all enough guidance then?
I
about
think
the
that
100
gives me a
bypass?
framework to work with Donna on, and again, we've talked about reducing a lot of the mixed use and commercial that you don't see on that map in front of you.
Well, I was gonna ask, are we gonna kind of go over this in more detail? Because you know me, if we can get this done in one meeting instead
Yeah.
of three,
Yeah.
let's do it.
I think we've answered a couple of them. I think the next phase is to take a look at the reduction in mixed use, which again, this one's our old one, so this one might be good to take a look at. And then for,
So I'm drawing on the old one because I'm not a fan of a lot of the new ones.
okay, well, do you want to maybe share what you're not a fan of? That,
Well, I was gonna ask if, yeah, however you wanna tackle this by neighborhood or,
move this so you guys can see
or
both.
by road.
Can I make a general statement?
Yes.
To start? The mayor has already kind of reflected this in some of the markups he's done here, is that when there was rezoning, what, 2 years ago? There was a lot of public pushback about how the mixed use had grown out into established neighborhoods. And that was probably one of the lightning rod issues that motivated the public. So one of the things I want to champion is to get rid of that where, you know, you have already established neighborhoods with homes.
Right.
You know, and I'll speak from experience where I used to live. They rezoned neighborhoods and then they came out and wiped out single-family homes and they put those skinny house high-rises. And then that provided sort of the precedent for start putting in multi-unit, multi-floor dwellings. And before you knew it, they had zoned out single-family homes. And I'm not saying that North Idaho is like that, but it's the mindset or the lens with which I look at this issue.
I think that this map right here kind of demonstrates that there was some mixed use up in these neighborhoods, and right now, the only mixed use I'm really seeing, is along Lancaster. What is this, Hayden? There's some down here on Prairie and along Highway 95 that I don't see any purple anymore inside of these existing neighborhoods, and it's really all along the major corridors.
Well, if you guys wanna go, would it help to just kind of go neighborhood by neighborhood?
Or you want to look at the whole map as a whole? and say,
Well,
do we
that's
like
my
it?
friend,
What
we
they-
gotta,
I mean,
we gotta
I guess
pick a
that's-
point.
That's fine, but you're looking at the current one, it looks like?
I got
He's
the,
got them both.
I got.
Yeah, because they removed that purple up there,
Yep.
like Donna was talking about, because that's really not what it is.
Well, but that's my first thing. So that development that's going in up there is going to have a medical center, it's gonna have
It's gonna have
a
some
gym.
commercial, but that's a zone. So it came in
But
as
if
a
you rezone that as
residential.
single-family residential, you can't have those uses, can you?
I'm not rezoning it. It's currently zoned single-family residential today,
Right?
and it's a residential PUD, and that's what it's reflected on the future land use map.
But shouldn't it be reflected on the future land use map for the uses that we're anticipating it having?
That's an argument that you could have. I mean, if that's the case, then we'll have a whole swath of it that's green because it's recreation. I mean, if
Well-
you want to break it down to that level, that's not what you usually do on the future land use map.
Okay, and I accept that guidance, but, and I don't want to get down to where we're looking at every acre, but for example, where we know in this development up here that they are going to have, what I don't want to do is have a developer have to come in and do a zone map change that doesn't seem to be compatible with the FLUM. In other words, if the FLUM gets changed to where this is single-family residential, and they want to put in that little medical center for that housing development, and city council, depending on who's there, says, no way, Jose, that's on the Flum single family.
But it has an approved plan unit development, that's the difference.
It's already,
It's already got, that's why it's got those hatch
Okay.
marks off over
it's
the top of
already,
it.
That's fine, okay.
Yeah, it's because
All
it's
right.
already got that kind of overlay.
that area, correct me if I'm wrong, up in that Hayden Canyon and that Lancaster Government Way, that's a done deal already. There's, everything they're doing there has already been approved and,
In their plan. unit.
yeah, so it's,
All right.
it's basically a done deal.
All right, that's
What
fine.
does that stand for?
Single family residence.
So what she's saying is we just do a hash mark of PUD, so it has an underlying
That's fine.
governing.
Can I ask another question before we get into this? So in recent times, we've been talking about infield fill, where we want to encourage maybe small postage stamps development of attainable housing. I hate using these words. But is that addressed as a zone?
That's a zone, yes.
What is that zone?
Well, you would create what you want that zone to be.
So we don't have anything for that today?
Mixed
Donna, can-
residential is a single-family cottage-style house.
Residential is,
Mixed residential.
mixed residential, okay. And that's,
Which is purple.
okay.
Blue.
No, it's.
Oh, sorry, yes, blue.
Light blue. Okay.
Or in this
So
case,
do you want to
somewhat
just
gray.
work around
Or
the
in that
map?
case, somewhat gray.
You guys want to work around the map then? Because I do have questions
Yeah,
on
so
all
that
these
we all know
changes.
where we're
Yeah,
looking
sure.
and we're
Yeah,
all
so
looking
we're
at the
just
same
gonna-
place at the same
Pick-
time.
All right, so
Pick
just,
a location.
yeah, so
and
just
we'll-
dropping down to Hayden Canyon South, I guess, that makes sense because those are not mixed residentials. Those are houses that are being developed as we speak as
Single-family
single-family homes. So, okay, that's fine.
It's all part of that same PUD, by the way.
I guess the next change I see that I'm not on board with unless I get a little more information is I'm concerned with the amount of commercial and then it looks like light industrial being proposed to the east of government. There are a lot of neighborhoods there.
It's blue.
Yeah, that's
It's
mixed
not,
residential.
it's not gray. It's blue.
This is blue,
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
meant to be this
so
one.
this is mixed residential. So
Yeah.
that didn't change. The only thing that
This is
changed,
95 and that's government, right?
no, this is government here.
That's government.
Yeah, this is government right
This
here.
is 95.
So I guess what you're saying then is you're changing the mixed use to more commercial along the eastern corridor of government. I guess I'd like to hear the rationale for that. Just because to me the mixed use, even though I know
So
it's
this was purple
Right.
and it's now
now
red.
red, right?
Correct.
Yeah, that's troublesome to me too.
So
There's a lot
the
of-
area that's south of Honey's, I'm gonna start at Prairie and work my way up. So
Yep, that's
from
fine.
Prairie to Honeysuckle is in Merritt Plaza. And although they worked hard at trying to allow them to have some residential, their CCNRs are very, very solid in the fact that they do not want to have any residential component in that subdivision, period, end of conversation.
So that's from
And
Honeysuckle
so-
to Prairie?
Yes, and so
That's-
they are predominantly built out at this point
That's
as
commercial?
commercial, so it didn't make sense
All right, that's fine.
at this point.
Yeah, and it's predominantly medical. you know.
Well, and there aren't
Right.
neighborhoods there. I was more concerned with going north, but.
Right, so I'm going
go ahead,
north.
going north.
So then as you're coming northward, you have the central business district runs
Honeysuckle, yeah, let's
from,
go Honeysuckle to Hayden, is that all right?
yeah, I'm actually gonna go to Dakota.
Dakota?
So from just south of Honeysuckle to just north of Dakota is the central business district, and the central business district as a district allows for mixed use. So why have a zoning designation calling it mixed use if you already allow for it in your central business district? And so that was part of that.
So you're
Kind of
saying
change.
that, so you're saying
Even though the
between,
map goes red, there's still purple allowed.
Yes.
No, I'm saying the central business
This is-
district is there.
I can't.
that's all right,
I have
let's,
a hard
I'm
time
gonna say,
following.
let's slow it down a little
Yeah,
bit.
yeah, yeah,
All right,
yeah.
so just to be clear, so between Honeysuckle and Dakota is our
Dakota.
central business district.
On one lot on either side of a government way, full distance.
Art?
I just asked you, are you talking about zoning?
Not,
And that's why it doesn't show up on the future land use map as mixed use, is because the central business district, as an overlay district, already allows for it. It's not well utilized, but it is allowed for.
So,
but you're
Part of the
saying,
central business district.
Yeah.
Yeah.
but it's all, but you guys are saying all the commercial now.
No, I'm saying that your central business district allows for that use. I mean, we could make it purple, but central business district is that use. It's either commercial or it's residential, multifamily, or a combination of both.
Your zoning already allows for it.
I know, it just, I guess I just,
So we could,
I guess I just personally, maybe it's, I'm the only one in the room, just find it a little confusing to paint it red unless it's truly commercial. If there are mixed uses that are allowed in that area, I would prefer it to be purple, but
Well, we
What's
could
not
also-
on there is the overlay of the central business district.
Correct.
Which does allow it.
and it's in a map.
So you have to kind of
appendix.
superimpose the CBD over the top of the red.
Understand.
Yeah.
Which you could do.
Which you could do, absolutely, right. But
I'm
that's
just saying,
why
I
it's
think
not
let's
on
make
there.
it clear, whatever the product is, let's make it clear for the future.
So then I have a question.
So, just to be fair to Rachel and her team,
Yeah.
when you're drawing future land use maps, you're not drawing them at a parcel layer. To be fair, right?
You mean
Rachel? I
it's the fuzzy line concept?
Right, so that's where
It
you
is
take
meant to be
a
that way.
big marker that's yay wide, and you draw a swath, which we heard loud and clear from the council as well as the community.
Right.
You did not want to see, which is why it kind of got moved off of this one. So we were just kind of trying to recognize both worlds. We're fine with, Rachel and her team are fine with making whatever changes you're proposing and bringing them forward. I just wanted to kind of explain why that occurred.
And ideally, you have a simple future land use map. It's not supposed to be inclusive of every single thing. That's your zoning map. So it's meant to be, again, that guiding.
Right. I appreciate you answering my question.
No, that's good. And then from Dakota North, we just tried to keep for consistency's sake,
So I drew it in.
the fact that most of those uses today are commercial, and recognizing the fact that they're mostly commercial today with very, very little, we haven't had very much interest, in fact, of going to mixed use. We just recognized that
That's
here
Dakota.
and made it commercial.
That's Dakota all the way north until we hit Emerald Estates.
Okay, so I have a question.
Which, by the way, is
Because
county.
I can't tell on a map, how deep that goes. How deep does that go? So that, for instance, that's Jaden Court then, right?
Yeah.
So that's how deep the whole thing goes.
Yeah.
That's what I needed to know, is some perspective, because we're saying, let's skinny it up, but I need to know really what is that?
Right. And then again, trying to bridge that gap and reduce, recognizing that you're trying to reduce conflict points. You don't really want to have larger, single-family residential butted right up against commercial. That's why the mixed residential is in blue.
Yep, got no issue with that. I'm just concerned, like I said, if there's homes here and it's now designated commercial.
It's not. It's not. Your future land use map shows it as commercial. Your zone may or may not.
Understand. I mean,
Probably is today,
I meant my
actually.
comments as they relate to the FLUM, not to the allowed uses map, which is a completely different map.
Yeah. And most of the areas along Government Way and Hayden Avenue, when the city zoned this city, I don't have a zone map in front of me, are zoned commercial because they just took a swath down the street and zoned. So, generally speaking, you've got a lot of commercial in that corridor
All right,
today.
Don, a question for you.
Is this
that's a zone map.
So in terms of physical scale, how deep does that commercial zone go?
It kind of matches up with what the current zoning is what I was trying to point out.
This is the current zone map.
And again, I think we're gonna get the context of the neighborhood. If somebody comes in and they're in that commercial or zone and they're up against residential, I think that would come to the discussion of, do we want to put this commercial entity in with what is currently homes? You know, because it appears as though the development over time has a lot of this kind of, you know, around each other type thing, but as you go up Government Way, yeah, the Jaden Court, there are
That's
some.
Jaden Court,
there are-
that's residential.
There are some residences in there,
Yes.
And here.
and there, you know, are we going, the council at the time will have that ability to determine whether whatever the proposal is fits within the context of that particular area.
Is that correct? Okay.
I guess
So
my
design's
concern
good.
is, I've found the farther north we go, sometimes we run into cases that come before planning and zoning or council where there's a house there, there's a commercial use there, and they're trying to do something goofy there, and because we've allowed house to be in a commercial zone, it creates problems. So for me personally, I would say if there's a house or neighborhood there, I'm not a big fan of marking it commercial, even if it's just the flum and not the land use map. I'm not sure what else you would color this, but
So
unless
if
we're
you-
willing to live with the headaches.
Well, we have forever. So.
Yeah, but they exist, right? It's not just me.
Since we had
They
zone maps,
exist.
since we created the first zone map, this has been a headache.
Yep. And it is, it's farther
They're
north
legally
on the east side of
Single
government.
family residential that are in commercial, residing as residential uses are considered legally non-conforming uses today.
Right. And
And they have since the beginning that we created zoning.
is there
It was
another?
Before me.
Because,
Did they become non-conforming because the land under them was rezoned, or?
After they were already constructed. Because most
luckily
of
they're
those homes,
grandfathered unless they. try to
Yeah,
do
I
something.
most of those
understand.
old homes were built before the city of Hayden had zoning.
Yeah.
So. I mean, to be
But I mean,
fair,
if we were to drop the,
The mayor, he can say grandfather?
Say non-conforming.
What'd you say?
He said, are you gonna let him say grandfather? You don't let me say grandfather.
Did I say grandfather?
I know, he's the mayor. Mayor gets to
He
say
did.
grandfather.
Oh.
I have to say
we could create
non-conforming.
we could create a map that kind of showed you all that, but what you're
No.
gonna see is a lot of spot zoning too.
yeah, I was curious if without avoiding spot zoning, could we drop the area east of government, south of Emerald Estates into some other zone at the top, maybe starting at Lacey or something? I'm just asking the question.
Well, I was again thinking in the back of my mind as this discussion ensued that we still have this thing sort of floating around of these obtainable houses. And I think everybody in this room wants to make sure that they're like postage stamp size mixed in with more regular looking homes.
I don't think we're gonna see that in this particular corridor that we're talking about now.
Okay, I was wondering if this was an opportunity to plug them into these areas, but.
So maybe a better question would be from a bigger picture, would back up a little bit farther out of the weeds from parcels. And ask the council, from a future perspective, what you want the city of Hayden to look like, and you're driving up Government Way, where do you want it to convert from commercial uses to residential uses?
I think that's kind of delineated right now.
Yeah.
At
Yeah.
Buckles, when you hit into Emerald, and then north of Emerald is the PUD, and south of Buckles, on the east side there, as we come this way, is, like I say, for the most part, developed commercialists. On the other side, between the freeway, you aren't gonna put, I don't think you're gonna put homes in there, residential in there. And stuff, like I said, stuff that's already non-conforming, that's in there, you aren't, I mean, when you go and tear it down,
Well, no, but maybe that's where you delineate it on the east side of government. Because the west side of government is pretty much already commercial.
right.
But the east side of government that butts up to the residential, where we've got residential, say on the south side of Wyoming, but an open land, commercial-ish use on the north side of there, that maybe I don't know, that's such a busy intersection already that to put, and not saying that it would be, but to zone that so that that had higher density, I think would be problematic for that
I think any
intersection.
higher
Be
density.
really
of-
careful to stop
Yeah, I'm sorry.
jumping back and forth between zones and land uses.
Okay.
That's the danger of going parcel by parcel, and it's the danger of your exercise right now. And that's why Donna just sent you down that exercise of high level, where would you want to end your commercial uses and start something different?
Okay.
Because it's a future land use map, it's not a zone map.
There it is.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask a question, because I think I like this, with the answer, depending on the answer to the question. So suppose I live east of Lacey, anywhere between Buckles and Prairie,
East of Lacey.
and I have a house that I'm,
Lacey runs east-west.
sorry, not,
East of Government.
East Government, sorry, I live on Lacey, sorry. East of Government, north of Prairie, south of Buckles, that red area that's changed. Let's say I have a residence that I own and live in, and it's non-conforming, and I decide that I want to sell it. When I sell it, does it automatically become commercial, or does it stay non-conforming?
Just stays residential.
If I wanted to sell it to a business, would it make it easier for me to change it from non-conforming to commercial?
Or it could just stay non-conforming.
It can stay non-conforming residential. Your person that buys it, if they want it to become a commercial business, then they need to come in and work it through the building permit process to make that
Okay.
conversion and meet commercial requirements.
So it's not saying that we're trying to have residences in that area become commercial eventually. It's just a broad stroke of a brush, and that's it. Nothing else changes.
Part of the, you talked about Government Way North there. It can only be widened so far because there's already, and it's already pretty narrow. And when Hayden Canyon is built out, and it's already, that whole area, people are complaining already about the traffic on Government Way. If we go in there with anything other, if the land use in there is anything other than commercial, and you start packing more residential land use, Government Way's already a nightmare. We're having a problem right out, all the way up and down, you know? So I think that designating any more residential land use on Government Way is only looking to exacerbate the traffic issues. So
That's a good point, Ed.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think we're good with along
The
government.
commercial,
The government, I think we're good with that.
good with the commercial.
All right, I guess, do you mind if I just go to the next one? Is that all right? with
Yeah,
everybody?
please.
I don't want to take away somebody else's. So down off Prairie, just to the west of the 95, looks like we took the Cornerstone area from mixed use to commercial.
Part of it. This here.
Part of it, right? What was the thought there?
It's already built out.
Yeah, it's already built out.
Built out, like my eye doctor's right down there.
Okay.
And then, isn't Avista right here as well?
Yeah,
General Telephone,
whatever that is.
or whoever they are now.
Yeah, that cable. Give them about a month and they'll change it again.
All right.
Sorry.
So continuing north to Honeysuckle, again, west of 95 there, I noticed that was left alone pretty much. Is that already developed mixed use mostly? Is that why?
It's a planned unit development, it's a mixed-use planned unit development.
It's a PUD.
I'm looking at what
So
it
that
is
is-
today.
Surrounding this little enclave of,
Houses
Where's
off Davis.
oh,
Is that
that,
this?
yeah, I know what that is.
So it's the same.
So again, you know,
Yeah,
using that
trying to
big
see.
broad brushstroke of
Right.
Highway 95, that's what that.
Okay. So if we move more north to Hayden off of the 95 to the west again, I guess this is where I have a big difference between both the maps. And that is my desire to squeeze mixed use closer to the corridor than on both. I've drawn on mine basically one lot deep, going all the way west past,
Are you in Hayden, Mayor?
It's on Highway 95.
yeah, west of 95 on
Oh, it's on
Hayden.
Hayden.
Okay.
Okay, sorry.
On both these maps,
The size of the purple.
yeah, on both these maps, we've still left quite a bit of mixed use to the north and less to the south, but I think I'm even a little skinnier than you are.
I think you're probably, I've drawn some dotted lines, which I think is designate exactly what you're saying
I
now.
think he was thinking, you guys were mind
Yeah.
melding there.
Yeah.
So I
like a
challenge
full-
you to
go
go
ahead.
back and read your mixed-use design standards before you decide that you think that's a good plan.
Why?
Because can't meet them. You're gonna future land use, map yourself out of all of the design standards that you worked so hard to create for the mixed use.
For example,
If you have a secondary lot and you're building on a secondary lot, you design it this way. Well, you just eliminated all your secondary lots because you made it too narrow.
What do you mean so,
You've got a
break out the
You put the
crayons.
commercial in the front, you have these apartments over here. You can't build these apartments making that narrow. Those apartments were built on Hayden Avenue, they're too deep because you just narrowed it up.
Well, it's very similar. I'll use the example again of the apartments out there. I don't know if it's Carrington Apartments or what they are
But
south.
they're not secondary lots. That's a front lot, that's not a secondary lot.
would you diagram this?
Well, I was gonna say, regardless if that's the case, Don, there's gonna be a sweet spot, because right now,
Right, no,
mixed use
absolutely.
goes south past D Court to maybe Tamarindo, Arish. I don't,
That's narrow, look at this
I
one.
know.
That's narrower.
is it?
Yeah.
So on the south, maybe we're pretty dang close. It looks like actually south might be what Ed and I are both thinking here. But the idea is to squeeze the mixed use down is what I'm getting at.
You see that?
All of
You
this
see that? No, here, on the south end,
And that's fine, it's just that we'll have to amend a lot code.
there's D Court.
And Donna, I'm just,
Oh,
if what you've drawn here to the south of Hayden accomplishes that, I think it's way better than what we've got now. It's still,
Yeah,
there's
that's why,
D, so
yeah.
it's north of D.
Yeah.
So this looks like on the south
This?
side, that's reasonable.
What is that there?
See, and it comes up around this.
Is that zoning or land use?
That's just land use. So your secondary lot would be your residential.
See, this is all
You're putting
developed.
zoning
Right.
already-
in the future land.
Well, on this one, this purple follows this line.
Right.
Zoning in the land
I'm
use.
But in
showing
reality-
this up here, see, on this one.
So
it took
all I'm
all
showing
of
is the
this
secondary
out.
lot.
Right.
Okay,
See,
So like the parking lot in the front would be a commercial use.
Right.
And your residential multifamily would be a secondary lot.
Behind
So if you narrow up your mixed use,
then we won't be able to build
You-
behind, I understand.
and if you're doing a zone map amendment in accordance with the comprehensive plan, you can't get there to do that.
And that's just because of the way the lots are deep.
Potentially.
They're deep.
Yeah, I see that.
Well, on the south side, I mean, this is pretty close to what I've drawn, so I get that. What about up north, though? Up north, it still looks pretty fat. Go up to Helen, Kyler.
Those are larger lots, like you were
Yeah,
saying,
here
right?
it is.
Oh, they
Yeah, but
already
it's-
have mixed-use components in part of those are,
Right.
So that's
those are
reflective of
areas
what
are
exists.
reflective, are already what exists out there today. And not in all cases, but broad
This is skinnied up
brush stroke
considerably.
cases.
Yeah, the south side of Hayden has been skinnied up nicely. I'm just
because there's
asking-
already existing
It's existing mixed
homes
use.
and things in there. I think there's probably more open space still up in the, if we had a satellite view looking down on this area here, like here's a huge open space lot. I mean, these people attend a lot, attend our meetings.
Right.
And have expressed, they don't want any, I mean,
Right.
they like their trees and they like their ruralness and like, but yeah. But if we were to put up the assessors or whatever it is, the county property line and lot designation, I think you'd see a lot of these lots down here extend
Right. So you've
deeper,
got-
as you say.
Looking at,
And I
let's see.
personally,
Yeah, see, that's, but it's.
we're
deep
kind of,
on this side.
with the
Yeah,
exception of this stuff up here, which has been removed,
Mhm.
okay? And understanding the lots that we're dealing with here, and the reduction that we're taking in other places, we're kind of, that's the way it is. I mean, we aren't gonna be able to cut those
Can I?
people
Yeah,
off.
that's a satellite view.
See,
You can expand it if you just
Yep.
see it.
Because if you
Yeah.
look at the current future land use map along
So
Hutter,
basically saying that would
you know,
be mixed
if we
use.
The
remove,
way she's.
it's a give and take. You're gonna take all of this purple
Has
out,
developed.
so much of this purple out, that this small stretch here that we're kind of locked into having to
On the
allow it.
north.
When you compare this small little segment here with the removal of all of this purple
Okay,
up in here,
Yeah,
All right.
it is a reduction.
well, it's all a reduction, I guess we're just getting clarification as to
Yeah.
why. And I get it, that makes
And
sense.
the other piece, just looking big picture, not little bitty picture, is as you're looking big picture and you're trying to meet the, kind of the layout of what you put in your design direction related to where do you want your mixed use to be located. If somebody came in and requested a zone map amendment to mixed use, you've stated that you want them on your transportation corridors. And then the second question that you have to ask yourself is that there are areas that make sense for potentially, not all areas, on a case-by-case basis, how many more caveats can I add in here? That makes sense for some redevelopment potential that maybe have out-aged their useful life of what their use are today, and it may make some sense to redevelop them into a better use, meeting your other design standards and goals that you guys have set.
Well, I don't know if this is addressing kind of what you just said, but when you think about the changes that we've made related to mixed use, it used to be 20 dwellings per acre. And if you look at the 16 acres over there that was talked about earlier, it's like almost 50 dwellings an acre. And ours is now 12, and they can get up to 15 if they add amenities, which cost and the like. And it's why we had, I believe it's a major reason why we have seen 0 approvals or permits for this since we made those changes. Okay, that even if they did come in here, you aren't going to see those monstrosities if you're only getting 12, 13 units per acre on that land.
I will rest. That's all my questions on the differences between this discussion draft and the current flum. So I'll yield to anybody else that wants to ask questions. This pretty much, I mean, again, I never think these are perfect, but I think this gets us at least 90% of what our citizens have been asking us to do.
Well, I think, again, I'll touch on it again. The people who say, oh, there's this gigantic purple cloud, okay? Well, if you remove all of this purple, which we're proposing here, all of this purple, which we're proposing here, and we end up, for the people, okay, with this probably less than half of the total amount of purple that's on there. I think the people in the survey did say, they did recognize that we need a variety of which mixed use, everybody knows, I'm not a fan of it, okay, but I think this adjustment meets the desires of those who took the survey primarily, and those of what many on council and P&Z have discussed.
Donna, thank you for providing us with a draft that makes sense, that apparently we don't have too much of an issue with, I think, as a group so far at least.
Can I ask a question back on the west side of Hutter? I know it brings us back, but I have a thought on how to protect that area and essentially continue to allow property rights. And that is, what if we mimicked what Post Falls has in that section where it's 5+ acre development?
Are you anticipating annexation in the future? And you said west side of Hutter.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying is that if we designated that and a large swath of what now is county
And they're
or
5 acre
shared
minimum.
tier
Yeah.
to 5+ acre developments, it's still developable. If I own the land, I still have the right to develop it, but it's in a swath that's as small as we can develop it, so that we keep a barrier. You know, you've come into Hayden because you've got this big area where we've tried to protect the prairie by allowing only very large parcels in that section. But because it's county and shared tier, at this point, I don't know that we can we even designate anything? I'm just
Well,
trying
for the
to find a
future, if we're
way.
annexed in.
Mary, will you pause just for a second?
Sure.
Because I have to be able to turn a microphone on and I couldn't do that.
Oh, sorry.
So it's not your fault. We're going to be in a situation where the entire area of impact, or what we formerly called area of city impact, by the new Idaho code that came into effect in July of this year, that's all going to be renegotiated, and what you're talking about is going to be a part of those negotiations within the next year. So I think it'll I think your point is well taken, but it's also going to be addressed in the area of impact negotiations that are going to start right away, and that we're required to have concluded by December of 2025.
Okay.
Fonda, can you cite what piece of legislation you're speaking?
I would have to look at the code section. It's
Is it-
Idaho code.
Is that the one where they're saying that counties are gonna have to start protecting agricultural land?
No, it's the previous area of city impact code section in Idaho code has been redefined and rewritten. It's now called area of impact. And the process of negotiating and identifying our area of impact for growth purposes or development purposes outside of our boundaries has changed completely. And so the process for negotiating, the elements of negotiation, the burden of who negotiates has changed, and there's been a time frame put on us to do this. So that's all going to occur, and what Mary's talking about will also be addressed in those negotiations. So I don't want you to feel like you have to deal with that right now in this conversation about your comprehensive plan, because it's naturally going to occur.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
When will those negotiations begin and who will be doing the negotiating?
But just, that'll all come to you in the near future.
It's not a part of tonight.
I love when
Not a
people do
part of
that to you. They give you something, oh, I can't tell you about it.
It's not that we can't
All
tell
right,
you,
so-
Ed, it's
so-
that we don't know yet.
Yeah, well, we know enough to know that the mayor's meeting that the county commissioners have called, I think, what, quarterly? Is set to discuss this issue initially, and we've been reached out by other agencies or other cities within the
Right.
region that they want to start discussing it.
If there's a deadline by next December, the way things move at a snail's pace, it better get going.
Anyways, my point is that those conversations are beginning to happen.
So for council or commissioners, are there any other discussion and direction on the future land use map?
I think this is good.
Can I just ask for a summary of some of the things that we discussed? Because we started out with the Hutter corridor, and we talked about a change of the current, even the latest zoning.
We're not talking zoning.
Not talking
Land
zoning.
use
Sorry,
only.
sorry,
Do not say zone.
I don't mean, forgive me. I still claim novice status, okay?
You have novice status, that's fine.
We discussed a change from even the current land use map to something else. Is that a true statement or not?
Yes,
Yes.
we
Okay.
made some changes, yes,
And
from
what I
both of
heard
those.
from like Councilman DePriest and Roder was, let's leave it as protected as possible for the time being, because we have no idea
Yep.
what will happen in the future. And we wouldn't want to allow like mixed use and growth out there and then find later on that there's no justification for it because the Hutter bypass went away. Is that a true statement? Did I summarize that correctly?
We'll work with Donna on the language for the ACI area as that transition happens, yes.
Because all of this also affects your master planning.
Sewer, transportation.
And, yeah, your sewer your
Oh,
sewer master
yeah,
plan.
yeah, I can.
Your
Sewer,
transportation master plan.
transportation. Sewer, transportation.
Yeah.
Could we wait? No.
So I understand. So your job is to tell us then what areas of our comprehensive plan need to be addressed based on what we've given you.
Right, that's what I was doing. I was hitting, we hit all three of our targeted results.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next step, the next workshop's gonna then, when they take this back, is to discuss the impacts to amending the comp plan based on this new information.
Yep, we have some areas we need to touch in your comp plan to amend, period, and then we'll take a look at your transportation, your utilities, and your parks, and work with your staff on an assessment there of what may need to be touched on those plans as well. So it's an assessment to report back to you on next steps and impacts to other plans.
So can I bring up another item that's sort of separate? So, I know how, it was probably the second most important thing that citizens brought up when we had that survey. After, holy cow, we're growing too fast, let's put the brakes on, was the discussion about parks. I know that this is important to the mayor. I'm sort of ambivalent on it, just for full disclosure. I have observed, since we went through the budgeting process just recently, that parks are the fastest growing cost center for our Public Works Department. Is that a true statement?
What was it?
Maintenance of parks, is that the fastest growing cost center within our Public Works budget?
We're definitely hitting a fever pitch moment of trying to keep up with the number of parks that are likely to come on within the next 10 years. I don't know that I go as far as to say it's the largest increasing, because transportation definitely has hit some pretty big costly.
Yeah, okay, but you're kind of verifying.
Yeah, it's definitely growing.
A broad brush
Yes.
statement that I just made. And I think that as a city, we need to prioritize, infrastructure is the most important thing. Like the fact that every citizen is getting sewer, water, transportation on the roads is first class. And then for me personally, I'm representing my vision is that while I love parks, I don't put them up there as high as a priority as those other things I just stated. I'm asking, is this a shared consensus or not? And if it is, how does that work into the comprehensive plan? So, now that I've thrown a hornet's nest out there for people to discuss.
I don't know if it fits in this discussion, or does it?
No, it
Because I don't
doesn't, but
see
it
parks
was
as
definitely
part of this.
part of our goals and policies, which is the
Right.
document we got today.
I think that might be, best to hit the next layer.
Okay.
Once we get through goals and policies and we start talking about actual city code, that would be the time to prioritize.
Well,
Obviously, we need to have roads, we need to have sewer.
You also have adopted parks plans with levels of service
Yes.
that require a certain number of acres per population.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
And,
and that also impacts, go ahead,
no, I was gonna
affects
pivot.
impact fees
Yes,
and the importance of what you put in there.
and what you can ask for in impact fees.
Correct.
So SJC, do we have a clear direction ahead?
Yes.
All right.
Yes, thank you
Anybody
for your
got anything
time.
else to add?
The only thing, Mr. Mayor, I did look up the code section for Councilman Schaefer. 67-6526 is the new code related to areas of impact.
And I'm sending out the state legislative law, which is Senate Bill
Oh, you are sending it
1403.
out? Good. Okay.
Senate Bill 1403.
We have these little things over here that can let us send information to you immediately.
I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
We're adjourned. Thank you, everybody.